I'm Sally Penni. We've got a great speaker tonight. If you missed it previously, that was entirely our administrator's fault, but you're here today, so that's great. So Dr. Jo McCormack is very renowned and will start in a moment. But I'm just thrilled she's here, especially in January, where we're all trying to lose weight.
So I'm Joanne McCormack. I was a GP for, I qualified in 1986, so quite a long time ago. And in 2014, I learned about childhood obesity in a different way, and it made me see adult obesity in a different way from a professor of endocrinology in California called Robert Lustig. And his video Fat Chance has been viewed millions of times on YouTube, and I really highly recommend it, or any writing by Robert Lustig. He's not alone. I'm not alone. So I'm one of approximately 400 doctors and dietitians who have an online discussion group about the effective ways of becoming healthy and also eating well. So at first, a lot of people coming to my groups, I run groups, I'm a trustee of a charity to do with healthy eating. At first, a lot of people came to my groups who were overweight, but increasingly I started seeing skinny people who were unhealthy through bad diet. And I do get probably a third of my inquiries from thin people who are very unhealthy. They might have autoimmune disease, that's a big one, or other things, just tired all the time, that sort of thing, because they don't eat properly. So when I was looking at your Twitter feeds today, I was aware that a lot of us are just really stressed by this second lockdown, whether we've got children or not. And it's sort of thinking about food as yet another burden for people. They think, how can I do this on top of everything else? And I think if we turn it on its head and think, how can we nourish ourselves? How can we look after ourselves in lockdown? We're not going to be talking about nourishing ourselves with things like cakes and biscuits and alcohol. Really, we know it's not going to nourish us. It's just going to be sort of kicking ourselves at night time if we do too much of that. But if we think about nourishing ourselves, we're thinking about proper food, buying in proper food, very quick recipes if we're stressed and we don't have enough time because we're doing other things, but quick recipes with maybe 4 or 5 ingredients tops. And I'm thinking about nourishment rather than about calories. I did put together a little presentation, so I'll see if I can share it. So this is just a little presentation, 6 slides, just saying, is there a perfect diet? Okay. Okay, so this is the biggie. This is linking into what Sally asked. Bear with me a second. Yes, this is linked into what Sally asked. So should you eat animal products? Wouldn't it push up your cholesterol? Wouldn't it kill you? So as Sally introduced me as the fat doctor. So I'm not actually fat, I'm pretty much a normal weight, but I advocate eating fats, healthy fats. And that's where it's nuanced. We're all intelligent people and not all fats are the same. So you could imagine the fats in biscuits, cakes, and let me see, pizzas wouldn't be great fats if they were bought biscuits, cakes, and pizzas. You might make a pizza more healthily at home. But you could imagine that the fats in, say, fish and olive oil were okay. So I think we're all agreed about that. There's nothing wrong with fats in fish and olive oil. But actually, it's even more subtle than that. So the fats in lamb and pork and beef contain a mixture of saturated and unsaturated fat. And as long as you eat an otherwise good diet, you're not eating junk, you're not drinking junk in the form of, say, Coca-Cola. Animal products are fine in their place, but all of this is based on, all the fear about fat is based on a 70-year-old theory around cholesterol and saturated fat. I don't know if you can see a ghosty screen of me across this Ansel Keys little might need to move out of the way. Ansel Keys research from about 70 years ago. But what happened was that he cherry-picked his countries and found an association between saturated fat and heart disease, which has since been disproven, but industries have been built on it. So the statin industry has been built on it, which is massive. If you look at the most wealthy companies in the world, they're the drug companies, particularly the statin companies. And fat's been demonized, and lots of other fats have been made, such as margarine, things like Utterly Butterly, other products like Stork SB. There's no evidence at all they're more healthy than animal products. In fact, they're probably less healthy. But basically, it was the monetization of bad science. So we talk a lot now about following the science. Well, if you follow bad science, particularly for profit, you get nowhere really. And obviously, vegan diets are really up there. I don't know if any of you are vegan. I have some concerns about going vegan. I don't think it's synonymous with health, running a vegan diet. You will need supplements. There's no doubt about it, you need supplements. But I would say you can have an unhealthy vegan diet, and you can have an unhealthy animal diet, and you can also have a healthy animal diet, and you can have a reasonably healthy vegan diet. But a lot of people in the real world start eating a lot of processed food when they become vegan, and that's not necessarily a good thing. This is a little bit about calories in, calories out. It's a tempting idea, but it's not actually true. If you think about it, the end point would be you would weigh nothing, which is rubbish. And it's not helpful to think about calories when we're stressed. You know, have I had too many calories today? It's more important to think, have I eaten enough nutrients today? Have I had enough calories? You know, there's no point having a lunch of, say, tuna salad with no mayo if you're hungry an hour later. This is the Eat Well guide by something called SACN. That's the government agency who were asked to draw it up. Your lawyers, follow the profit. They didn't follow the science. They used the science to make a profit, and the science has since been disproven. For instance, there's no evidence that you need to eat carbohydrates because your body makes sugar. There are no essential carbohydrates at all, because your body makes sugar all the time. Even when you're lying in bed, you wake up, your body makes sugar. Unfortunately, the Eat Well guide underpins school meals. So if you can get it together and you're at home to actually cook your children meals through the day, and I'm not saying it's easy, but you'll probably produce a better meal at home than they would have had at school. There are no essentials outlined there at all. If you had no money, or if, say, we were stopped from going out at all, and we had to use our store cupboard ingredients, the first things we should try and eat would be things like tins of meat, tins of fish, and use up our beans for the proteins. What other things? The fish oils are really important. If you are vegetarian, vegan, getting fats from things like eggs, coconut oil, that sort of thing. If you're not vegetarian or vegan, getting the essentials from meat or fish. And one thing they never talk about is stabilizing your blood glucose. So I think a lot of parents say that's important. I think a lot of people realize if the blood sugar isn't stable, they get hungry in the afternoon. And your blood sugar goes up and down if you eat sweet and starchy foods more than if you base your meals on fat and protein foods. So let's say bacon and egg in the morning will keep your blood sugar stable, cereal won't. Or a sandwich and Twix bar will make your blood sugar in the afternoon go up and down. If you had a tuna salad with lots of olive oil on it, some olives and some walnuts, that would keep your blood sugar more stable. Just as a little aside, 5 a day has largely been invented by fruit and veg companies, and there's an association between eating a lot of fruit and veg with health, because quite frankly, they're quite expensive, especially if you're going to have 5 a day. So for my family, that would have meant 35 pieces of fruit and veg a day, a lot, and also a degree of cooking. But if you eat a banana, it's not going to keep you full for long, whereas if you have a chicken leg, it will. Okay, or a hard-boiled egg. And they're not all the same. You know, often manufacturers of fruit and veg or suppliers will say, you know, any sort of fruit and veg will do. It won't. They're not the same. Like cabbage is not the same as a pineapple. Okay, so I know you're all really busy, and I was really busy as a GP when I came upon this and thought about it, and I just couldn't get enough of it. It is 6 years ago. My lifestyle changed then, and it's never really changed back. Well, it hasn't. It just changed the way I looked on things. But these are people who I think speak a lot of sense. So Zoe Harcombe is a PhD nutritionist who's also a statistician. If you want to read a lot about cholesterol and statins, Malcolm Kendrick and the Fat Emperor write a lot of very readable stuff. Diet Doctor's great for blood sugar normalization and for weight normalization. And Fat is My Friend is my little website. It's a very small website. I don't do much on it, but I set it up initially and it's got links to me, so you can write to me and so on, and to my social media. And just whenever you've got time, make time, because your health depends on it. And unfortunately, you can't rely on the science that the government gives you, because it's the makeup of the committees are basically people in the pay of the food companies. I can see why they've done it from an economic point of view, because they want to keep all the businesses going and keep everybody happy. But that's the only, that's it really. So that was a quick whiz through it. So I'm open to questions, because I know there is quite a lot to take in, and you'll all have your own individual perspective. And one thing I say to people in my groups is, a year from now, you're a lot healthier. What does healthier mean to you? Because it means different things to different people. So you don't have to tell me that, but it probably will give you the way forward if you think about what healthier means to you. That's a very good question. Well, what's happened to you is probably what happens to everybody as they get older, unless something intervenes, like they're poorly or something. But basically, our metabolisms tend to get worse with time. So if we eat and drink exactly the same amount and we exercise the same amount, we tend to put weight on over time. So there are two methods I find very, very effective. One is a low carbohydrate diet, and you can do your version of a low carbohydrate diet. No matter what sort of basic diet you follow, you can make it lower in carbohydrate. The other thing is not snacking, and that includes drinks, so apart from water or black tea or coffee. So at its most extreme end, you would have somebody who just had one meal a day, and that's actually called OMAD, O-M-A-D, and you can speak to people online who practice OMAD, and there's quite a lot written about it. So if I tell you about, it's quite interesting really. So there are two people I'd like to talk about, and I won't use their real names, but they illustrate a couple of very important points about putting on weight and losing weight. And one of them I'll call Julie. Now, Julie got to being about 32 stone through a combination of being poorly, being vegan, and not being able to exercise. Now, being vegan doesn't suit everybody. And at first, a lot of people feel better because they do their own cooking and they exercise a lot. They may give up smoking as well. They may give up alcohol, lots of things associated with being healthy. But over 2 or 3 years, they gradually deplete some of the vitamins, and it's harder to get enough vitamins from a vegan diet. But Julie also became poorly, and she was a vegan for very many years. And then she associated with a lot of people who are vegan and vegetarian as well. So that compounded it. And she discovered about low carbohydrate diets about 2 years ago. And she's so far lost 10 stone in spite of not being able to exercise. So that's very good, isn't it? That's great. And she follows a low carbohydrate 1 or 2 meals a day diet. And she's down to 20 stone now, which is great. Now, the other person I'll tell you about, I'll call Bill. Now, Bill used to be 22 stone 2 years ago, and Bill is now 11 stone and pretty thin for it, really. He's quite a tall man. And Bill did it through a low carbohydrate diet and very strict fasting. So fasting suits quite a lot of people, especially busy people, because ironically, once you've started fasting, I'm told, and I haven't done very long fast, but Bill has, and he tells me that when he doesn't eat for a day, he's actually less hungry. But if he eats 1 meal a day, he's actually a bit more hungry than no meals a day. And so Bill has, not with his doctor's help, but of his own volition, has done some 2 and 3 day fasts, as well as routinely doing 1 meal a day. So that illustrates 2 people who were seriously overweight, one of whom's achieved his goal already and one of whom's well on the way to. She's 50% there. If I think about myself, I was only 2 stone overweight, and I went on a you can get a book to show you to actually work out how many grams a day you eat of carbohydrate. I went on a 30 gram a day carbohydrate diet as a matter of interest, if you know what I mean. I thought, this sounds easy to do, I'm going to try it. Not really to lose weight. I didn't really think of myself as being overweight. I just thought, well, my motivation was to try and prevent diabetes because my grandmother had it, and I knew I was putting on weight. And that's one of the things, find your own motivation. Whatever, what would be, better to me meant knowing I hadn't put on that 2 stone, and meaning I'd be less likely to get diabetes, or I'd put it off for another few years. But the 30 gram a day carbohydrate diet for me worked, and I did have 3 meals a day and sometimes snacks, but not a lot of snacks, it has to be said. And they got less over time. And then I went to a period of having 2 meals a day, because life's busy, and when you follow a low carbohydrate diet, often you're not that hungry. And so if I did an early morning shift at the time, I would have been starting work sometimes at 7, and I had to drive there, so I wouldn't feel like breakfast. So I would have my first meal at 12 when I came back from the shift, and then another meal at maybe 7 o'clock. And if I had a later shift, I would have my breakfast at, say, 8 o'clock, start work at 9, and then have another meal at 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, but not have any lunch. And actually, I found not having lunch very helpful. I never felt hungry when I followed a low carb diet, but I couldn't have done that when I was doing my normal diet, which was pretty standard, because everybody eats different things, don't they? I ask a lot of people, well, what do you eat exactly? So mine was a pretty classic cereal for breakfast or brown bread toast, and I liked brown cereal, and sometimes with a banana on it, and a cup of tea. And then I would have a sandwich for lunch, usually brown bread again, or maybe I might have a quiche. And then on a bad day, I might have crisps, and I might have like a flake or something like that. And on a good day, I might have a piece of fruit. And then from an evening meal, I would have had maybe pasta and chicken or fish, or I didn't eat a lot of red meat. I actually went 10 years without eating beef, when the mad cow thing went on. But I actually think a little bit of meat is quite helpful. It gives you B12. And I've been involved in a campaign through my charity called Organuary to encourage people to eat, if you are going to eat meat, to eat all bits of the animal, because they're very nutritious organ meats like liver and kidney and so on. And why waste it? If an animal's got to die, and especially an animal that's been well looked after, why should we waste meat? There's no point. But so I do eat a bit of everything now, but I am definitely low carb. So low carb people don't eat things like bread, rice, pasta, cakes, sweets, biscuits, mince pies, all that sort of thing. So some of those things we think of as being helpful, like brown bread and brown rice, and the other things we definitely think as unhealthful, like your cakes and biscuits. But I've gradually got, from doing it 6 years ago, it's just not part of what I do now. It feels a bit like someone who used to smoke, but they don't smoke anymore. It's like I don't eat those things. If somebody offers me a biscuit, it's not like I'm being good and saying no. It's just like, oh, I don't eat stuff like that. Thanks. So I hope that answers your question. So it's basically low carb diets and trying to eat less often.
Thank you. Thanks, Joanne. So just so that I can clarify, brown bread and brown rice in moderation is fine. It's everything else.
No, I would say it isn't. I would say that if you want to lose weight, cutting out brown bread and rice would be part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then occasionally, the person I learned it from was an American doctor, and he thought that you could probably manage it. Most people, not everybody can manage it this way, but he thought most people would manage it if they never ate bread. Bread's a biggie; it's a big problem because of the wheat, and it tends to stimulate the appetite. But if they only had things like rice and pulses and so on about twice a week, he felt that would work. And actually that is what I did. I would have things like rice maybe twice a week. I had some root vegetables, which are also quite high in carbs. Basically, carbs are just sugar molecules all stuck together. And when we want to lose weight, once we've got older and we want to lose weight, it's quite a good tool for losing weight. But we've all got our foods that we don't have an off switch for. It's true. And I would have had a lot of pasta, but with like a sort of meaty sauce all running through it, or lots of cheese on it. Yeah, so one of the, I'll tell you about this man. He's really very nice. He's a very nice cookery writer. He's called Giancarlo Caldesi, and he's an Italian restaurant owner in Marylebone, and he became diabetic, and he's written a fabulous book of pasta recipes without the pasta. He's got all sorts of ideas of things that you can have instead of pasta with all the sauces. And it's called the Diabetes Low Carb Cookbook, or Diabetes Weight Loss Cookbook. And I use it. I'm not diabetic, but obviously I don't want to be. But they're the most wonderful recipes. And he has written something like 11 cookbooks. He's had a BBC Two series. He's not very, I hadn't heard of him before, but the recipes are so tasty. And some of them are very, very quick. I'll see if I can find it and show it to you. Let's see. I'll be back in a minute.
Parlo italiano.
Yes, indeed. There he is. That's it. Katie and Giancarlo. Mustn't forget Katie. It's great. They've got a cookery school as well. Anyway, those recipes are fab. And if you love pasta, and Giancarlo had to do it, he absolutely adored pasta. And yeah, I've done so many that the pages have stuck together.
Sign of a good cookbook.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, they've got things like this, super quick tomato sauce. What's that one? Roasted vegetable sauce with tomato cream and chili. Yeah, they've got all sorts of things. But yeah, I've used that again and again. My sisters have got it as well. They've used it a lot. They're very keen cooks. But some of them are very, very quick. You know, when we're busy, it's difficult. So yeah, so that's how I get through the pasta problem.